Welcome, Drink with James, episode 188. We are doing something a little bit different today. May I introduce you to Grace Murray, VP of Strategy at Fohr, one of my dear friends who've been here for...
6.5 years.
Is it really? No. You've been here for, yes, 6.5-ish years.
That's right.
Working with us. We're trying something new today. Today, we are doing another single topic episode. And I wanted to bring Grace in for a number of reasons. One, I'm sick of fucking running my mouth by myself all the time. It's nice to have another voice here. Grace, again, leads our strategy, so she is in charge of making sure the things that our clients are doing are the actual things that they should be doing, and is a lot closer to the campaign execution process than I am these days as I sit in my walnut tower here. And so we've never really, I think, focused on stories specifically. Mm-hmm. And I want to start by just kind of talking about how we think about them. I had, Jamie Beck was on the show a long time ago, and she said that for her feed has become like Vogue, and her stories are what her feed used to be. Mm-hmm. What do you think, when you think of, even personally, how you can think of the difference between stories and in-feed?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like despite your social advice and my knowing better, I probably only post in-feed like once a week, if that. On stories, I'm just putting them all out there,
yeah.
throwing them all out there. It's a lot like lower stakes, it feels like. You do it a little more when you're like bored.
Yeah.
Maybe craving a little attention.
Yep. Little
affirmation.
Tell me I'm beautiful, world.
Yep. Tell me I'm beautiful. Tell me my life's interesting.
Yeah,
tell me
absolutely.
I'm funny. Tell me you love The Bachelor as well.
Exactly.
It's a big one for me. They're very different, I think, as it pertains to the campaigns that we're running. Sometimes the content that we get for stories is very similar for stories as it is in feed, but then if you actually see that go live, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just like taking the post that should have been in feed and trying to slap it into a story, and it's just like...
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that Instagram exists, well, now Instagram exists to make money, but Instagram was created for people to stay in touch with their friends. I mean, that is like Facebook's whole thing, right? Like they will buy any company that people are sharing photos with each other, because their whole thing is that like you share content with people you love to stay close. And I think stories, if Instagram was about staying close to your friends, when the feeds became, like Jamie said, like Vogue, it stopped giving you a peek into your friend's life. And I think that what is interesting about stories is waking up and seeing who was out late the night before drinking, who's waking up early and going on a workout, who's on their way to a trip. And so for most people, I don't think it actually has to be interesting necessarily, because it is like more informative about this is what is happening in my life. Because I like to know, oh, my buddy's going to Miami, you know, like that. It's not any like great feat of creativity. It's just staying connected to people that you care about.
Yeah.
In the personal sense. But I think when you zoom out to an influencer, then you have to think about how intentional am I being, right? Like, am I just bored seeking affirmation? Or do I have something to say, right?
Yeah.
Who, for you, whose stories do you actually care about?
Stories I actually care about. A lot of my friends, obviously. I do stay pretty close to your stories for obvious reasons.
Contractual.
Give a little engagement. Still watching.
Imagine if I made every Fohr employee, in their contract, be like, you must comment and like every
I'd say
photo.
the vibe is pretty close. It's not contractual.
I do
It's
strongly...
implicitly encouraged.
It's implicit, yes.
Yeah.
I do also strongly encourage, to the point of forcing people to have public accounts. I feel like in the work that we do, you should have a public and active account.
I heard that you requested an adjustment of a handle recently also.
You know, I mean, I do what I can to, yeah. So friends.
Influencers who I think they are friends or their content makes you feel like they're your friend, and that it's very like personality forward. I've referenced to you Sai from Scout the City, Christina Caradona, who we both love from Tro Rouge, both of which are just funny and a little more scrappy on stories than a lot of people. Less just like, here I am on my way to Zimmerman, as you're saying, and more like, here is me eating takeout, watching cartoons, which is Christina usually, and Sai doing a mixture of like a solid mixture of product recommendations and work, and then just like funny, you know, low production stuff, but she's entertaining.
Yeah, I think that like some people are naturally compelling and like interesting, and like there are people that can just post meaningless bullshit, but they are interesting. So by nature, anything they do, be it watching cartoons, is kind of interesting and funny.
Right.
There are other people that like, I think that the problem is that when people who are not naturally, I don't want to say that they're not naturally interesting, because they might be, but they are not entertaining. Like, you know, they're not maybe naturally funny, or like they don't have this over the top big personality. And I think for them, you probably need to be more, like we say, intentional about maybe being educational, or like making sure if you're just covering your day that you're like giving some context and providing some value. I think like the core principles are no different than we say all the time. And in feed posts, like, don't hit publish unless it is valuable for your audience to see that. And I think same goes for stories. Why it might, you know, you being like, hey, off to Miami, that is like, that does give some value, I guess, because your friends and family and your followers might care that you're off to Miami. But I think trying a little harder, like Emily, who we both like, and I know you love her account, and I've said she's great at stories as well. Like, she posts a lot of like articles and she'll like highlight them.
Yeah.
Right?
She'll like she'll post the article and then she'll underline the kind of key thing that she took away from it. And then, I find myself following her stories and being like, oh, I didn't even have to read the article.
Well, then you just be like, hey, I read this article. Yeah, exactly. It was great.
Read this article and I got this little insight. And so it's like, there's a lot of value in watching her stories, because I feel like I'm ingesting a lot more reading than I actually am on the fly.
Yes.
I think too with Emily's stories, there is, even though it's less, she's not a full-blown macro influencer or whatever, but there is still, for me, an element of like day-to-day aspiration of how she is spending her day and who she is. And I think stories are a lot of that, because it is showing what someone does throughout their day. Like you did your very intentional day the other day.
I did. I documented my whole day and was like on the bike in the morning, and I was like, I've wanted to do this for like a year, but I've always been like gun shy. I don't know, because I have like crippling self-doubt probably, but I've always been like, nobody will care, I'm not going to do it. That feels a little self-indulgent to be like, look at my day. But then I stopped caring, or maybe I am self-indulgent. So I posted my day, and I tried to be like as transparent as possible, and like not just say this is what I'm doing, but say here is maybe why I do it, or why this is, you know, why am I having this meeting? Why am I talking to this person? Or what is interesting about that? And a lot of people, like, I got a lot more engagement than I usually do. And I think the simple nature of like stepping back and being like, I have an actual plan. Right. I have a thing I'm doing, not just like, there's a puppy. I pull out the phone and be like, whoo, let me get that.
I felt a little bad watching that, because I was like, James is really busy. Like, I was like, oh, he does. Yeah, that was a big day. Whereas normally I'm like, James swanning around, like, here we go.
It was a big day, but like, and I honestly wanted to pick not a hugely busy day, because I get really frustrated when I see people who become successful who are still covering their days in great depth. It's like, I really don't like hustle porn.
Yeah.
Of just like, oh man, working all day, fucking working, yeah, I'm working. And it's just like, it gets into like Gary V.
On the grind.
Yeah, it gets into like Gary V type,
Yeah.
like, I am so special because I'm working hard. I don't find that very interesting, personally. And so I was actually feeling, by the end of the day, a little self-conscious because the day ended up being a little busier than I thought, and it felt a little braggy.
Yeah.
I mean, do you find yourself watching people's stories and being like, get over yourself often?
Yeah, but I kind of enjoy watching those stories. So I don't know what that is. It says about me.
Probably that you're like a more confident, sane person than I am.
No, but I mean more out of like, as a, like, I enjoy the feeling of being like, you would post that. It's like,
you just hate following.
Yeah, I just hate, like, that's rude. But I feel like that is, psychologically, there is something to that of wanting to see what someone else is. It's just like a voyeuristic thing of being like, what would you be doing with your day?
Yeah.
And what does your day look like versus mine? Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a weird thing too about watching your own story back at the end of the day. I feel like we've talked about this before, when you, like, you know, get into bed and trying to fall asleep and then you can't fall asleep, and then you watch other people's stories and then you end up watching your own story and you're like, oh, my day kind of was awesome. It's like an Instagram gratitude journal.
Yeah.
Because you're not posting anything terrible.
Right.
Usually, unless
Generally.
it's like, here's my, you know, unexpected sharing of vulnerability. Yeah. Which does very well on Instagram, it turned out.
I struggle a little bit with weeping stories.
Yeah.
You know, I struggle with
You struggle with weeping in general.
I do struggle
From
with
personal
weeping
experience.
in general. But I really don't, like, when it's like, guys, and it's just like, wait, one second, hold on. Okay, guys, like, I'm just like, motherfucker, put your phone away and be sad by yourself, please.
True, I agree, and I have the same initial reflex.
When in this crisis did you think, let's record it?
It is weird if you think about the aspect of like zooming above that person and seeing them crying, and instead of just crying, holding up their phone and crying. But there's also the opposite argument of like, should people only share when they feel good? I think that's not necessarily the healthiest thing in the world. Yeah. I hear you though. It can be tough. It can be a little jolty.
I haven't cried since high school.
Yeah, you are a full-blown psycho.
So tears make me uncomfortable in general.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about sponsored stories. When it's so funny, we had a For You the other day, and this woman came up to me and she was like, a couple of years ago, you said on Drink with James that nobody gives a shit about stories and you can do whatever you want.
Shots fired.
That was true because they just launched. And I remember us being like, brands should be sponsoring these. Yeah. But like, they just weren't. And you could talk about a sponsored post you had in stories, but there was no requirements for at least a year. I think, to be like, because I remember early on we were like, we should be selling story campaigns because like when the stories first launched, there was like 50% of your audience was watching them because they were so new. Yeah. That is obviously not the case now, and there's a lot of stories that are sponsored. You have built more of these campaigns than I have, and I think you were talking about the difficulty of needing brand approval on it, and so by the nature of needing approval on the story, once the story gets posted, it is not going to fit in with your actual day. You're going to be in a new outfit. It's going to be a different kind of content.
Be in a different location.
Like how do influencers, how do you weave like stories in so that they don't feel like, let's cut to commercial?
Yeah.
You know?
Because that's what it does feel like, that of like, oh, here I am talking to my camera, having my general day in New York, and then it's like, throw back to this still editorial photo of me in New Orleans or Paris or wherever, wearing this different outfit and like hashtag ad, and then it goes back to the regular content. So the stories content that's sponsored to me can feel drastically more forced and terrible than bad in-feed content. But it is hard. It is hard on the brand and kind of on the other side of it to say like, well, how do we do it? Because we do need to approve it. I think I think the thing that's hard for brands is like, we used to be able to get away with saying that you're not going to get approval on stories, but you're going to get approval on in-feed. But then it felt like people did the bare minimum on stories. Right. And I think we also didn't really have a good way of thinking about stories to say the point of this is to convince someone to do something or that you like something or to tell them about why a product's interesting. And so I think now, you know, a lot of the stories that we brief when it is a product that requires explanation, we try and brief it in a way that's like, do it in an environment in which you would be in regularly, so it can be slotted into the day. So if it's in your home,
at least you're sitting at your desk or
so
whatever.
You can kind of figure out when to just insert it, and that it's not like, you know, I'm just at home and now all of a sudden I have perfect makeup and I'm on the top of the Empire State Building, like talking about the sense of this fragrance.
And I think if you do that, if you are sharing outtakes from an editorial or something, that can make sense.
Yeah.
But I think you have to cue it up.
Totally.
You know, you really, and I think with stories, you have to be so much more focused on like explaining first the partnership. So I don't think it can just be like, here's my breakfast, here's my workout, boom, I love this fragrance.
Right.
You know, I think it maybe needs to
neroli,
go over
notes of wood.
Yeah, go over to like a story that's like, hey guys, like turn the volume on, going to talk real quick about a recent collaboration. And then you're talking and being like, hey, so a month ago, this brand reached out. I've worn this fragrance forever. I love it. Like, I wanted to go and shoot in all these iconic New York locations, and I have an in-feed in my feed, but I was so excited about the photos. I want to show you guys a bunch of other ones as well. Like, you have to, I think, if you're gonna interrupt your day, the day that like people are just naturally interested in with this commercial, you have to like caveat it almost.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think we found, right, that like, let's talk swipe ups, right? Like generally you're doing stories because you need swipe ups.
Yeah.
And how, like, I think something influencers probably don't understand is that end of a campaign, if it's 5 influencers, 50 or 500, that the brand is probably looking Excel sheet, swipe ups, top to bottom, right? And so, like, you are being judged on how much action you can drive. And what have you found? Because I feel like we have unlocked some things that have worked.
Yeah.
What have you found that like actually gets people to like flip the old thumb up?
Definitely. I think the main thing that we've found is that, so a lot of the data that we have that we've been reviewing is saying that people don't watch stories with audio on. But a lot of the stories that drive clicks are speaking to camera. And so it kind of goes back to what you were saying about queuing it up and saying, hey guys, I'm about to talk about something or whatever. But I think the main thing is just saying something to your audience that feels like a very sincere product or service or whatever it is that you're excited about. And that it isn't, you know, that I feel like the more complicated, the less likely you are to post about that product in your story naturally, probably the more in depth you have to go into it. So if it's something that you would never organically post one frame about,
like a credit card, a deodorant, or
loyalty program,
a tampon, you probably just like, that's just not a natural thing to talk about.
Exactly. So I feel like the knee-jerk reaction if you're doing a sponsored campaign for that is to just do like quick little still, skip past it and be done with it.
Be like, let me get this over with.
Right, exactly. In which case you probably just shouldn't do it.
Yes.
Because your audience isn't going to think it's great. You might get a quick, you know, quick little Buckaroo, but you're not going to get re-engaged for that campaign because you wouldn't have driven any action at all. And, you know, I think that we did a campaign for a like subscription box that parents could subscribe to teach their kids about, it was like a science STEM kind of box. And we had contracted people for 3 frames of an Instagram story based on a brief that they had told us, like, this is what's worked for us in the past. We then got all the results and had all the click-through numbers, and the brand were really disappointed and were like, in comparison to what we have done versus what you guys have done, there's literally such a huge kind of discrepancy between the results. And we were so confused because we were like, but we took the brief of what you guys said had been working for you. We found these people with really great story views, and we, briefed them in the exact way that you said would work, and you approved the content. So how are we performing at like 1/10 of what you guys performed at? So then I got them to send me a huge kind of folder of every link or every story file that had driven a lot of action. And those stories were like 10 frames long. And, on one hand, it's like, oh, it seems like a lot to talk about a sponsored product for that long. But when it's a product that, there's this scientific research behind as to why it impacts, why it, is going to work for your kid, that it was founded by these women in California who are scientists and teachers and mums, that it has, different ages for different kids, and there's all of these different, so you can't, if you're just going to try and cram all that into 3 frames like we had recommended, it's not enough time to explain it, versus if you kind of let it breathe and explain it in the way that you would in a conversation.
And we talk about, like, when we train salespeople, and Grace, you've always said this, is that like so much of it is like this transfer of energy, right? That like if you are energetic and you can transfer that energy, that is sales. Like that is sales. Like I said in Drink with James 10 episodes ago or so, that like marketing, so much of marketing is making someone feel the way you feel about something. I love this, I want you to love it. That bridge is marketing. Like that's the goal. And another way to say it is congruent communication, which is that like your facial expressions and your mood and your whole being match the words you're saying. So instead of being like, hey guys, I am so excited to talk to you today about this new campaign I'm on. I'm so excited, that like you actually have to like spend a minute before to like, do the Cool Runnings mirror scene, that like I see pride, I see power, and it's just like you gotta fucking amp yourself up and be like, I love this deodorant. I am so fucking stoked to talk about it because you know what sucks? Stinking. Like BO sucks. Like that is not like, we just had For You the other day, and this is not a BO situation, but it was more of a halitosis one. And sometimes people talking at you with bad breath, and you're just like, oh God. And so like mints are important, toothpaste is important, deodorant is important. You can get excited about these things. But if you did it for a paycheck and you're like, guys, I have a post about deodorant in my feed, go like it please. You have to make sure your energy level matches what you're saying. And so I think what you were saying is that like the less natural or endemic a product is to the platform. It is not natural to talk about your bank on Instagram. It's not natural to talk about your deodorant. The more excited you have to legitimately be.
And it's what we do too, if for a meeting, it's a good way to think about it, of like the less that you would talk about it or the less excited you would normally be, the more you have to think about it and the more you have to prepare for it, hopefully through using the product and finding what is interesting about it. But if it was like a graph or a diagram, it's like excited, not excited, how much you have to prepare, how much you don't. Because we do that for meetings too. If it's just a cool brand and we're going to a meeting, we're like,
yeah, great.
Let's go.
Let's talk Nike.
Let's talk to them. Yeah, let's go Nike. We're ready. And we would just sit there, me in particular, would talk until they told me to leave. But if it's not that, which is a lot of brands that are paying for sponsored content, there are still ways of finding the interesting thing. Like to your point about deodorant, there is no worse kind of impression to leave on someone than you stinking.
Yes. Or like sweating through a blazer, which like we've all done.
The Adderall sweats.
The Adderall sweats are very real. I'm definitely dying of cancer just from the amount of aluminum that is in my deodorant.
Well,
like my friend the other day was like,
there is
14% aluminum in this. You're rubbing.
Have you tried Dove aluminum free?
No,
we've got some samples.
I'm on like super prescription. I just need to Botox my armpits. Honestly.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's what I need to do.
It makes me feel a little bit ill, but yeah, I feel
But like I'm ruining expensive clothes. Because not that I'm a disgusting sweaty beast, but the Adderall will randomly make one armpit sweat. Like not my right one, but like just the left one. And I'm just like, what is happening here?
Oh dear.
So I use I don't know, some prescription bullshit with like it's all aluminum. They're just like warning this product will definitely kill you.
Oh God.
But you won't be stinking. Which
you won't be stinking.
I'd rather smell fresh for like 75 years and die than make it to 80.
Your sponsored pharma story
I'm
next
ready.
week.
I'm ready.
It's exactly this clip, but for that like on the verge of legality product. No, but back to the kind of amping yourself up thing. Like there have been so many meetings that ostensibly I'm like, this brand is lame.
It happens.
It happens.
None of our current clients, who we all love, and they're
we
all
love
very
and adore.
cool.
You're all so beautiful. But I do, like I've trained myself, and I feel like we've trained our team to figure out ways of amping yourself up. And again, you don't have to do it if the brand is already cool.
Right.
But the more challenging the brand, the more we talk about it before the meeting and try and find what it is that's exciting about it, because none of us are like actors, and it's the same with stories where it's so hard to it's harder to fake or feign interest on a story than it is in feed, because in feed you can just kind of write it out.
Write something. I'm so excited. Okay.
Yeah.
I trust you.
Right. I trust you.
Yeah.
Throw some adjectives in there.
Some emoji or two.
Yeah. Oh, flames. Like,
all
perfect. Of it. But if you're speaking to camera and you can't act, which most people can't.
Right. You need to be excited.
You need to be excited.
You need to feel that. And I think another thing about action and performance on a story is that like when you think about the swipe up, like think about how often you swipe up on a story, which is probably almost never, right? And then you're asking your audience to do that. And like it or not, that is a metric that you are being judged on. And so you have to almost create a scenario where you introduce a mystery or a question, and that question is answered by swiping up, right? Like you have to create, not like, because like most people are not going to just like buy it right there, right? Because like that's just not how we shop. But you need people to swipe.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to get them to swipe? I saw something that Erica Fox from Retro Flame did for like a while ago on a campaign where she outperformed. At the time she was at like 80,000 followers. She outperformed people with like 600,000. And she was like, hey, I think it was maybe like a mascara thing, and there was like 8 colors. And she was like, or eyeshadow. I guess there's probably not 8 colors of mascara. I don't fucking know. I haven't worn mascara in years. Although I did go through like an emo eyeliner phase in college. Anyway, I digress.
Brian will throw that on the edit. Perfect.
So she was like, hey, so excited to partner with this brand. Why don't you guys swipe up, tell me what color I should wear tonight.
Perfect.
Swipe up to see, I'm super excited about all the colors. She had them all. She's like, swipe up, comment on my in-feed what color I should wear. The one that gets the most votes, I will do it. Boom. She fucking crushed everyone. Crushed them. Because she gave a reason to swipe up. If it was a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock and she was like, hey guys, swipe up to see all the colors, you'd be like, no. I'm like,
don't want to do that.
I'm on the toilet. Or I'm in a meeting. I don't know. What are you doing on Insta stories, But she gave a little game, there was a question and answering it involved swiping up.
Right.
And I think that can be really good. So, look, we're going to wrap this up. Grace and I have known each other for a long time. And this is, I confess, the second Negroni because this is a Friday evening. So, let's wrap it up with some general tips.
Okay.
First of all, I want to get your thoughts. So, we did a survey And 80% of people said, I love to repost stories when people tag me in them. And only 28% of people said that they can even stand seeing people's reposts. What do you feel like is an appropriate amount of story reposting that should happen?
I think a repost should only be, you should only use it to still tell a part of the day or a part of the story. So for example, if it's your birthday party and there are 20 people taking an Instagram story of you blowing out the candles, probably only need to post that once.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need it from like 5 different angles.
Right.
Same probably goes for like the birthday, happy birthday.
Yeah, let's just talk about
situations.
birthday situations. I think you get 5. 5 of
Five's
your
good.
most famous, influential friends that you're flexing on, right? Like if it's my birthday, which is May 6th, and I get like Teza and like, you know, a
Grace
lot,
Murray.
like people that are like very influential and known, and they wish me happy birthday, and you do, I'm reposting them, and I'm just like patting you on the back, being like,
Cheers.
thank you, you know?
Thanks,
So,
Steve.
but I think you get 5.
You get 5.
I think 5 is a good rule. I think maybe we can all just take this to be like, on your birthday, you get 5 reposts, you get no more. Because
Line in the sand.
I literally, like, it's someone's birthday, and I'm like, oh God, Jesus Christ, here we go. I have to fucking deal with this all day.
I feel
Being
you.
like, and then it'll be like, not only are people like, yes, I'm reposting that one thing, but let's say your friend does a story where they have 20 frames of photos of you.
That's
and they're
a
like,
good friend too.
that's a good friend.
Yeah.
I feel free. But like, that's for me, you know, and like the people that then redo every single one of those. And again, as I say, if your story looks like the like perforated edge of like a very fine graph paper at the top, like you are doing it wrong.
Right.
You know, it can't be the tiny, you need to see the dots.
Yeah.
If the dots have disappeared into essentially a solid line,
Taking a hard right.
there's problems.
Yeah.
So it is fun to repost stories, but nobody gives a shit. That is just a natural thing. You said something about screenshots that you liked.
Screenshots that I liked, or screenshots that I do.
No.
basically.
Like, yeah, you had a tip about getting people to screenshot, which I thought was good.
Find myself, so I've noticed this on I'm following a lot of food accounts, and it also it happens on lots of different accounts, but I find it happens a lot on food accounts, where it'll say, get ready for the recipe on the next frame, get ready to screenshot on the next frame, because there's a recipe for this thing that you've just seen me cook for the last 3 frames. And I don't know, like, human psychology, what it is, but even if I had watched those 3 frames of them cooking this, you know, chicken noodle soup that I would never cook, as soon as they say screenshot on the next frame, I'm like, oh my God, like, oh.
Yeah.
And then I do screenshot it. And then it's in my phone, and then when I'm grocery shopping or whatever, I'm like, oh, I have that recipe that
Yeah.
It's a weird
One day someone's
thing.
gonna like sneak a nude in there on you.
No.
Like, screenshot for the recipe. You're like, oh God.
It's a close friends. It's like close friends of someone I'm not close friends with. And you're like, why am I in your close friends? That's a weird. I feel like
Can you get yourself out of your close friends?
No,
Because
I don't
like
think you
a
can.
lot of times I don't want to be your close friend.
Do you think this is more of a just general
Hey, hit
question?
me.
Less for the people might enjoy this. Who knows?
Who knows?
Do you think it was?
Is anyone still watching?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think it was an error from Instagram to tell you that you were in someone's close friends? Because I think the actual benefit of close friends is being able to make the end user whose attention you want think that this is going out to everyone, but really it's just going out to them.
I see that. I think it's valuable in that, like, I will see people, friends of mine, post things that I'm like, oh my God, that should not be on the internet. And then I see close friends and I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, right.
But that's probably because a lot of my friends are delinquents. And I'm like, you can't put that online.
Right.
So I think in that it's valuable. But I see the value in being like, not knowing you're in the close friend, or that content is close friend.
Yeah, because sometimes I get the like green ring and I'm like, am I one of your close friends?
Yeah.
it's flattering, but
Right.
I'm like, interesting.
Well, you also control a decent amount of money, so there's probably a lot of people that want to be your friend.
Right.
Another tip, I think if you can create like a theme or something you do often, it works. Quigley does the like get ready with me, where like she's got her like no makeup face, and then she's like tap to put on concealer, and she does it, and boom.
Yeah.
And it's like her face is in the same place, and then she's like tap to put on, I don't know what makeup is, foundation, boom. You know, do my hair. And like even Christina, who we talked about, who has I don't know that Christina like is really thinking about her story, but she's
incredible. She's got the
she
bookends.
starts it saying, "Okay, I'm up," and she ends it being like, "Okay, I'm going to sleep." And it's just a little thing, but like it's every day.
Yeah.
You know, and it creates a thing where you're just used to seeing that. I love, I talk about Q Mike all the time. If you guys don't follow him, he's incredible. He does a lot of showing you behind the scenes of how he created these shots. Jamie Beck, Ann Street Studio, she will take you through like tutorials. She'll say, okay, here's how I'm editing this photo. She's got 200 layers in Photoshop. It's like, Jamie, this is not like here's how I'm editing. Like this is,
It's not like putting on concealer.
Yeah, no, it's a little more complex, but it's something that they do often. And I think
Right.
that if it can be, like, I don't think about this, but like every time I go on a bike ride, I take the same story of like no hands on my bike. I like shoot the handlebars and then like point up to show where I am. And like, that's it,
Yeah.
and I think that like the more you can do things that are like the same thing as people go through your story, they like, even if they're not looking at whose name is this, who am I looking at? They see, like they kind of recognize it because it's part of a series. So I think that like anything you can do to create a series, obviously Elizabeth Holmes with so many thoughts, like it just totally changed her life.
Yeah.
But like that worked, yes, obviously because she's incredibly smart and her analysis is like very in depth and she understands what she's talking about, but she created it in a serialized way that was the same every single time. Teza does before and after with her photo editing app. So she does a lot of like, she's obviously pushing her app, but she'll do like before and then edited.
Rach Martino does Behind the Gram, where it's like, oh, here's what the photo looked like
And, like,
before.
Long stories.
Long stories of like very in depth. Here's what it looked like before it was edited at all.
But like also like here was I was doing that day. Here's what the show, like. But it's just like I think
here was my inspiration behind it. Like,
generally a Disney princess,
Disney princess, Taylor Swift, Swifties, like
But I
But
think,
it is ongoing.
yeah, it's just training. You're just like we say when you are introducing a new kind of content in your feed, like you can train your audience. And in stories, I think you want to visually train them to get used to certain things that you do all the time, because that will, I think that will signify to people that they're watching your story. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Grace. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm out.